Welcome to Assembly or Micro SMT OpenPNP system part 2. This follows the second PDF you get, but I'm going to go into a slightly different order, and some steps I'll be handling differently than they did in the PDF, as it's a little simpler. So our first step is going to be not to install any motor, but to work on this nice rail we put in here previously with our 4 screws. We now have to remove it because we have to take off this slider here, because if you look carefully, and I hope you're extremely careful in unpacking your Z-axis with the 2 suction cup systems here, that pick your devices. The back here, this is going to go on this rail here, and you have to do it very carefully, because if you see in here and look, you'll notice there's bearings in there, and if I move this too far, the bearings could fall out. So you have to do this very, very carefully. But first we have to take this rail off and remove this slider here. So I'm going to do that with the 4 screws, and then we're going to remove this rail here. Now we're on a very ginger scary step. So I remove the rail, I remove the retaining clips, I remove the rail, and it slid right off, and as you can see, it lost the ball bearing already. These are very loosely caged in here, and I would have to fix this to use this again. I'm going to tape it up because it's a spare rail for any one of these other pieces should I need to do so. I need to install this one, and in order to do that, I need to very carefully slide this on here in the same way that this one came off. And if you recall, the slider sits up here, so we have to extremely carefully move this in while we slide out the plastic. If we screw it up, we're going to have bearings all over the floor, and that will not be a good thing. So recall again how the slider works on here. It sits right on this, so we have to turn this over so it slides on there the same way. And now we have to put this line up perfectly with it, and this rod's, you can see a little bit of this. If you look carefully, you can see some of this metal. We know what we're looking for, which is that little metal rail on the other side. I can now see that metal rail. I'm going to very, very carefully guide it into there, and I'm going to be real careful. And basically, don't touch this. What you want to do is, as you're pushing this out, push this in. And I was able to do this successfully. We now have our rail refastened, the guide clips tightened on, top and bottom, make sure they're both, and all 4 screws here tightly connected to the M3 square nuts. This slides nicely back and forth, and it's limited by the rails, so it won't come off. Let's take the last stepper motor. There's one stepper motor behind here on the Z-axis. Our Y-axis one is already attached back there. We did this previously with the frame. Our X-axis one is left, and we'll insert it with the plug facing backwards. and we'll have to put the synchronous gear in there. We already have the set screws in already, both of them, and as always, one will end up going on the shaft here where it's shaved, so you get on the flat part of the shaft to make sure it turns, and the other one will be 90 degrees from that one. So I'll put the stepper motor here, get it set in, and what we'll do first, of course, is get the 8 millimeter long M3 8 screws into the stepper motor from underneath. And now we're going to go ahead and line up this, about center it. Again, you're going to center it against the horizontal rail, because that's where the belt is going to be. But of course, the first screw you want to put on is the one associated with the flat part of the stepper. And if you can't see it, then take a little pliers and turn it a little bit. I'm going to be sneaking around to where it is and feel for it on the shaft. And then put the individual screws in there. So I see the flat part is over here on this side, and I'm going to take the 2 millimeter wrench, 2 millimeter Allen wrench, and bring it to that flat portion there. So now we are ready to start installing the belt. They give you one huge belt, so we're going to have to be careful because we need to do 3 different belts off this one assembly, and hopefully they gave us enough belt to do that. So we have to do 2 y-axis belts and 1 x-axis belt. So let's set the x-axis belt on first. We're going to do this by taking this here, again, teeth on the inside, and then sliding it down the rail. And that's the key part of this here, is it goes through the rail. Okay, so it's now sticking out the other side. You can now see it. And I'm going to keep pushing here to go around the axis. So hopefully you can see this. And the goal is here to keep pulling it until I get to this point here. So I'm going to use this end to clip it to where I want to get it. And I'm going to approximate it here first. This will be the tightening side, so I know where to cut it. So what we want to do first here is remove this just a little bit, just enough. To put the belt through it and clamp it down. And the goal is to be, of course, close as possible to the rail here to keep it tensioned properly. So I'm going to just do it the easy way, which is pretty much completely remove it, the screw, before I drive it through. Okay, we almost have it here. A little more pushing, and there we go. Okay, so we caught it, and we're going to go ahead and tighten this down completely, very snugly, so it can't move. And let's not have a drag on this here, so we're going to pull it back to this point here, so it's not going to be interfering with this slider here. Right? We don't want to catch it on that one. Not that this would be a big interference because it's little rubber, but we want to make sure that this is working without causing problems. Okay, as you can see, I've fastened this down. It kind of bends a lot when you do it. Make sure it's aligned perfectly with the rail here. And now I can pull this really tightly, not too tight that you're going to break it, just to see how much I need. And what you want to do is get there and maybe leave just about another ½ inch on top of that, just in case. Not that it's going to get looser, but you want to make sure you have enough space to thread it through. So find your cut point and then go for it. And this is the point of no return. So as you all say, measure twice, cut once. And I'm just going to make sure this is correct. It is correct. And we're going to go ahead and cut it here. All right. Now we need to unfasten this side and run it through. Okay, I don't know if that's too loose or not. Seems to be holding pretty well. I think I'd like to do one more tooth if I could, but it's not hitting this. And yeah, it seems there's a little bit too much play here, in my opinion, based upon doing a CNC machine. But I'm having a hard time trying to get one more tooth out of there. All right, as you can see, our x-axis is done and it looks good. Move it slowly, never move it fast when you have a stepper motor before it's plugged in, so you don't ruin it. But it's snug, and you can see when I kind of vibrates when you do that. That's usually a good sign that it's tight enough. It's not touching the rail, it's even, if you notice, and it smoothly goes across the gear, synchronous gear. So now we work on the y-axis, and this one is going to be same as we did before, which is the first thing we do is here is feed the rail that goes all the way back, and remember the teeth are on the inside always. So this one, on the back side, we'll clip to the bottom of the buckle and tighten it up. Let me do that real quick and I'll be right back. I understand what the instructions said to the y-axis first, because this is going to be a little bit of a problem here. And what I think I'm going to do is change what I'm doing and just cut this side here to an extra inch. Actually pull the other side through by an extra inch and just cinch this one here at the end and then go from there. So let me do that. I'm going to remove these, clip that here, and then we'll use the other side as the mechanism. All right, we finished this one, and you can see we strapped it behind it, and the front is where we started it. We're going to do the same one over here, and that will be it to get all the belts on properly. So I'm going to feed the end through, and we'll clip it, and we'll be done with the belts. We now have all our belts on and tightened, and the way you can tell the belts are correct, reasonably so, is if you examine them, look horizontally, they look perfectly straight, and when you tap them, you notice how it strums a bit. If you can't push it down on it to touch the rail, the belt is way too tight and should be loosened. If the belt doesn't strum, it sort of just flaps or touches the rail, the belt's too loose. So again, just tap it and you can tell. All right, but there's another thing to check too as well, and that is to make sure that the synchronous gear is lined up properly. When you look, I'm going to pull the camera around here now. You look, you can see the belt here is in the center, and you want to make sure it's close to the center for all positions. The idler gears here, idler wheels, you can move these up and down to align it. But the only way to move this one is with actually getting there with the Allen wrench. So let's go ahead and look at this one here. Hopefully it shows up now. Sorry about the camera movement and blurring. All right, let's try to just do this here. All right, hopefully you can see this now a little better. And you notice that the belt is near the edge. When I slowly move, you don't want to move this fast, you don't want to hurt the motor. You notice that the belt starts binding against this edge here. You can actually see it lifting up a little bit. That means that this needs to be moved, this synchronous gear. Now, one way to do it, of course, is just remove the belt, move the gear, put it back on again. But here's a little trick I learned working on CNC and 3D printer. And that is, you can always fold the belt up a little bit. Just get in here and loosen it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and find the two holes. You just crack the set screws loose, and that's easy to do. You just got to get lined up properly with the Allen wrench. And there we go. Really small Allen wrench, and just move the cog out a little bit and just push on it a little bit, and then if you can, kind of manually move the belt. What's going to happen here is that the tension holds the wheel in there, so you don't have to worry about that. The synchronous gear won't come off. You can just slide it around a little bit like I'm doing here and try to get it centered. Now I'll go back and forth again slowly and see if it's touching the edge. So it still needs to come out just a little bit more. So we'll move it out just a tad more. As you're moving, it'll self-center. That's the beauty of the belt system here. So push it out a little bit more, just to make it center a little bit. And the wheel won't get pushed back in. It actually holds its position pretty well. Now you look at this carefully, you can see part of the synchronous gear on the other side. So this is now a great position for it to be in. And for the whole length of my movement, at no point does the belt touch the edge of the synchronous gear. So now we have to get back to the holes and tighten them up again. All right? and then this one's done. So I'll go ahead and do this. Get the Allen wrench in there and tighten these up. And we're finished with this side. I think the front one's already been checked, and I'm going to check the other side after this. Okay, now you can see we have the belts on tight and snug, as I mentioned. One small change you may notice, this was upside down, so I just had to take the belts off, flip it with the rail, take the rail upside down, so it got back in position again. This needs to be on top, the stepper motor. So, small mistake, but everything else is fine. Another change I made is change the height of these bars. So I looked at the pictures and video that Bing has posted on his working machine, and I noted that this has to be, of course, high enough that the center section here in the Z-axis can reach the board and reach the, close enough to the camera and reach parts. So you need to move the center frame up, and what's important is that the center frame is equally distant from the top frame. So this horizontal bar here and this horizontal bar here need to be the same. And that distance is 6 centimeters. I'll post that in the picture itself. You'll see it. And these horizontal bars to take the feeders are 11.5 centimeters from the bottom of this bar to here. So I'll show you here in this one here. Yeah, it's 11.5 centimeters to the bottom of this bar, both front and rear. And that will allow us to start mounting equipment on the side here. Calling that the rear, where the Y-axis motor is, and the front per the pictures. And then there's another bay that's included in the little box, which has some springs and screws and other, mostly just screws and different sizes that we'll be using as we assemble this next section. So one thing you have to be aware of is that this system is shipped with the shipping with these rails, 3 rails, and they're oiled, but the oil is not oil that you use for actually running the machine. It's shipping oil. I wasn't aware of that until I talked to a good friend of mine and colleague, Mark, and so I went online, looked at his device as well, and figured out a way to remove this oil and replace it with something else that she can use. So let me talk about the 4 steps I did here. To remove the oil, actually the easiest thing was first to use WD-40 with the spray mode, and spray it is, especially on these little sleds, I call them, that sit on the rails there, and those are really important because that's where the bearings are. So make sure it gets in there, run it back and forth, and then clean off the rails with either a cloth or probably with a shop towel, which is more clothy than paper towel. And with that cleaned off, then use isopropyl alcohol, and I put it in a spray bottle so I could spray it, and did the same thing again. Sprayed everything down, rub it down individual rails, all 3, and make sure it got into the sleds, very important, and again ran it back and forth until I didn't see anything more shiny. It was all cleaned up. Then I used lithium grease with my fingers in a glove to run along and a little bit on top of, on the side where the channels are, because that's where the bearings are, again on all 3 rails. And when I clean that up, I went to a 4th step because I discovered something here. These have holes in them. These sleds have holes in them, and the hole actually goes into the whole interior. So I have a can of spray white lithium grease. Again, it's pouring these white lithium grease here, and it fits right into the hole of this, as you can see. And I would just spray to fill it, run it back and forth, spray it again, and I did that for all 3, moving back and forth doing it, and then wipe with the excess. And now this thing is very easy to move. It actually glides by itself. You push for a little bit, and this is now greased up properly for long life.